Because there were toes. I counted toes.
How many
There
toes,
were toes.
by the way?
5 toes. 5
Yeah.
definitive toes.
What size were the prints, would you say?
They were just over 13 inches large. They were like 13 and a quarter.
So I would think an adolescent.
That's what I would think too.
Did you get any?
You know,
I would say an adolescent Bigfoot.
Well, and a juvenile Bigfoot would be more curious, therefore getting themselves in stickier situations such as what occurred in my yard.
Yes,
And I
definitely
live in
for that.
Squatch country.
And I'm also thinking, that, could you imagine that conversation if he's the one that took your camera as well? And he gets back to his home, and his dad's like, "Where'd you get that?"
Right?
Take a back.
Yeah.
As a father myself, this is the conversation I feel myself having with my kid if he showed up. with a
Yeah.
game
Oh,
camera.
well, I'm sure his answer would be, "Oh, that nice lady that leaves us, you know, car toys and garlic." Yeah.
We've upgraded. I'm hoping for a phone.
Right? Matchbox cars are fine, cameras are not. Take it back. Yeah, I got to bring this up too. You know, it's been brought up recently that there's been more aggressive Bigfoot sightings. And based on the ones I've talked to, the researchers, that is, not Bigfoot, because I haven't talked about Bigfoot yet. The only, we're working on it. We are. But the only aggressive, if you want to call it that I've heard was in Darrington, where a woman was driving her car down the highway and had a log thrown through her window. It wasn't like a tree fell. It was actually a log that was thrown. I believe they are territorial. I believe if, again, your intentions were maybe not bad, but if you didn't listen to that voice in your head that said, maybe I should leave the woods, they might throw a rock, or, you know, in that case, they might throw a log. Because I always think of, you know, when we had Larry Anderson on the show and he was telling the story about the guy that went up and he played the guitar. And he wasn't there looking for Bigfoot. He was just out there to play his guitar. And he left and he went back the next day and he was gifted with a pile of flowers. Yes, not all Bigfoot encounters are like that one. Usually they stay hidden. I don't think they mean aggression. I think they're just guardians of the mountains, and if your intentions are bad, or if you don't listen to the territorial warnings, they'll give you a warning. So what have you heard in your years of research, Michael, when it comes to the Bigfoot side?
Well, you know, talking about Bigfoot throwing items, Lee Strauss on the UFOI team is our intrepid mountain man camera guy. He'll schlep up to 15,000 feet with camera gear just to get a sky watch done. But, of course, on the way, he has some interesting experiences. At one point, he mentioned up in the North Cascades, up in you guys' neck of the woods, he was on a abandoned forestry, road, and walking along when all of a sudden he says from the right-hand side of the trail comes this basketball-sized boulder across the path, and it was so large that it actually knocked over, broke in half, a bunch of trees on the left-hand side of the path that were very, large in circumference trees to begin with. And he sat there and stopped, obviously, and didn't go any farther. But he was thinking there's just no way that this rock could have come down from some kind of a hillside or a mountain and rolled and somehow bounced at that height across the path, because he didn't hear it rolling or coming at him. He just saw it come sailing across right in front of his path of travel. And he immediately picked up on the idea that, well, there's a squatch in these woods that doesn't want me to go any farther. So he definitely turned around and made a different path to get to where he was going. But that was quite a experience for him. Of course, he's out in the wilderness by himself. He does pack a sidearm just to protect himself from predators, but that was quite an experience. So I do know that they're territorial, and they basically want to protect. I mean, we've all seen the videos of the sign. You know, the trees, the 4-inch diameter trees that are snapped off up at about 10 feet high. You know, and basically are laid down in a certain position. And sometimes people will say that the direction in which the tree is snapped and then laid means something about the territory that they're trying to mark as well. So I think they...
Real quick, tell us about Gary's story.
Yeah, oh boy, Gary Anderson. You know, the owner of the network, Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, was with a physician friend of his. This is a medical doctor. And they were out in the really wilderness of BC, Canada. Matter of fact, they had this kind of a thing where they would go and actually visit these really remote sites up in the woods for historical purposes. One of the sites he was visiting, I believe, was an old World War II internment camp that had been created up there by the military in BC. And they were out there just kind of walking along. I think they both had cameras with them, because Gary's a real camera buff, has been his whole life. Loves to take photographs wherever he's going. And they're walking along, both of them, just kind of casually, but literally out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, this was quite a ways from civilization, and they were quite a ways from the trailhead where they got out of their car. And Gary swears, he says, "Oh my gosh, look at that bear over there, hunched down." Kind of a strange color to the bear, I think he said. And he was just about ready to take a photograph of this bear that he sees, and tells his friend about it, when all of a sudden this bear stood up and turned around, and obviously he knew immediately it was a Sasquatch, and it was not very happy that they were there. So obviously they had come upon a Sasquatch, either doing something, eating or whatever, and this Sasquatch started tearing after them. And these guys, Gary says, he's never ran that fast in his life. He was quite in shape at the time, and he and his friend just made it to, actually they made it to their car. But to their surprise, the Bigfoot that was supposedly chasing them, or he believes maybe another Bigfoot that was in the area, was already at the car. And Gary jumps in the driver's seat, because it was his vehicle, and guns the vehicle, and his friend basically is hanging outside of the car on his side of the vehicle, trying to get into the car as they're tearing out down the road. Fortunately, I guess the Bigfoot didn't chase them, or try to keep up with the car, because we've all heard of stories where cars going down the road 40, 50 miles an hour, and there's a jogging Bigfoot right next to it. So,
right,
but that's a dramatic story. He will never forget that story. And
can I break in,
sure,
guys, just for a second? Now, when the main thing is, like, I was in the military, I was in Vietnam. This thing scared, whatever out of me like you wouldn't believe. Like I told Michael, and I've told other people on the show, all through Vietnam, I would never wet my pants. I wet my pants. Now, right. When I was running, I did turn around once or twice, and I will say I saw this thing running on 2 legs and dropping down to 4, coming back to 2. Now, I looked maybe 2 or 3 times during that 2.5-mile run. Now, we were up in the Canadian Rockies where this internment camp was, and it was an old abandoned silver mine where it was located at. Now, when we get back to the car, there was a Bigfoot 25, 30 feet away from the car. Now, my wife was just nice enough to let me use her car because my car had like almost 200,000 miles on it. She just bought the car a week or 2 before the trip and said, "Here, take my car. I don't want to hear about you getting broke down in Canada." Right. We didn't have bear spray, naturally no weapons or anything. We get to the car, I noticed there's a Bigfoot like 25, 30 feet away from me, bending a tree over like a twig, just bending it. And it screamed. Now, the smell was so toxic. It smelled like urine, muss, and whatever it did, it actually burned your throat. That's how strong and pungent it was. Now, this was like the beginning of June. Up in the Canadian Rockies, there was still snow off the side of the roads in spots, and it was cold. Now, I'm taking off. My friend is trying to get into the car. I'm dragging him. I didn't even think about him, to be honest with you. I was that terrified. The thing threw a rock, hits the front fender of this Cavalier, which, again, it was new before the trip, puts a big dent in it. I go home. My wife says, "Okay, I know you don't smoke anything, but what were you smoking or what were you drinking? What did you hit?" And I said, "I didn't hit nothing." I told her the story, and she goes, "Okay, I know your friend's a medical doctor. He must have fixed you up with some good drugs." But I can honestly tell you, okay, it did not want us in the area. Now, I think, seriously, if we wouldn't have took off running, now this is my feeling, I wouldn't be talking right now. This thing was aggressive. It showed aggressiveness like I've never seen. Like I said, I went through Vietnam. I went through living hell. I was never this scared in my life. Now, I get people all the time wanting to come on to my show about Bigfoot, and people who claim they have seen Bigfoot, or they send me pictures. I know what a Bigfoot looks like because I ran into one. Okay, right. I know what they smell like. I know what they look like. I know what they sound like. So that's why you don't hear many people talking about Bigfoot on my show, because a lot of them, I hate to say it, they fake a lot of stuff. You go on Facebook, there was a guy this past week, posting the video of a Bigfoot. Well, I've been in photography before I even started talking on radio, which I was 10 years old when I started opening my mouth on radio. Now, this thing, like I saw on Facebook, I blew it up with some software I have, special software. First thing I noticed off of it, when it was walking, it was not walking like a Bigfoot would walk, because a Bigfoot doesn't even walk anything like that. One, I could see that the leg was moving underneath the hair. So right away, that was a dead giveaway after I blew it up. Hey, somebody had a real expensive costume.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people fake. And I'll let you guys get back to it. I had one guy, it begged to come on my show for months. And, he said he was an investigator and all this stuff. And he would send me tons of stuff. I asked him one day, I said, "Okay, well, if being an investigator, where have you checked for Bigfoot?" He goes, "Oh, no, I've never gone out and looked. I just investigate on the internet." I said, "Well, hey, nice talking to you." And he never was on my show. Now, I'll let you guys get back to your conversation.
Gary, one question. Did the car start immediately up, or was there a delay?